Well, hey everybody, welcome back to the In the Margins Goal Achievement Series. This is episode, I don't know. It's episode, I don't know. And I just realized my camera's like, there we go. There we go. I'm centered now. You'll have to forgive me. I'm a little flustered. There's a reason I don't like Apple products, and today is one of those reasons. Trying to get it to work with literally anything else is just painful. So I am trying to work on our whiteboard, but the system doesn't want to play ball. So I was hoping to display some things for you today that I actually do on here, but whatever. We'll see if we can make it work in the process here. Honestly, it might just be one of those things where I just end up ignoring it and going from there. so so as not to cause additional issues. So with that, let me start a review of where we have been here so far. So let's bring up the whiteboard that we have. And I want to zoom in and kind of just go over high level some of the things we've talked about to date. So first of all, we talked about kind of why to do things, or why we're doing things, and kind of focused in on that. Uh, the next thing we kind of talked about was the quadrant system, which is making sure that when it comes to the tasks that we're doing on a daily basis, the things we're scheduling, just how we're spending our time, we're doing so in a way that actually matters and does the right kind of things. Um, you got to be kidding me. Okay, yeah, this is just not probably not going to happen today. I'm probably just going to have to wing this as we go, or we might do uh, a little quadrant activity of our own when we have to, redo something later on. That could very well happen. Um, but yeah, we'll see. Oh my gosh, I just so frustrated in this kind of stuff. So anyway, the um, the way we're going to be approaching this from most perspectives is to try and keep things within this quadrant two activity, which is really things that are important but not urgent, which means that we're kind of working right in a zone of success as far as our minds go. And let's see, cancel, allow. Let me try something real quick here. So give me just a moment. All right, there we go. We are going to see how this works here. Can I mine it all the way? Okay. I'm going to hear myself in an echo, which is going to irritate me, but apparently I can't turn the volume all the way down on this. So we do apologize if we get any kind of feedback or echoes. Hopefully that's not going to happen, but hey, you know what? This is the nature of the game. Anyway, let's get back to yeah, okay. Give me just a moment. This is going to drive me crazy. So that idea has now ended. We are going to leave that. Okay. No iPad today. Oh my goodness. I am so frustrated. We'll try and get a resource out to everybody another time. Maybe by the time we're kind of wrapping this thing up all this week, we can actually get a resource out to you. My hope, honestly, is to get a full-time or like a regular resource for you guys, like something you can download as a PDF that you can kind of either print out or down the road. I'm even looking into the possibility of having a like a actual planner that's kind of IT related. And so this is something I'm kind of looking at very seriously. So if there's enough uh, positive feedback on that sort of thing, then we'll do exactly that. But anyway, aside back to the main points here. Obviously, we want to try and keep our time mostly set on things that are important but not urgent. And there's other ways things flow into that, but there's some important things to realize about quadrant four. So basically go back and review that video, or even better, go read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, where he talks in great detail about this, which is appropriate because it's his system. So there's that. The next thing we talked about was setting smarter goals, which SMARTER. You may have heard SMART goals before, but smarter goals are specific, measurable, actionable, or sometimes we say achievable, risky, time bound, exciting, and relevant. And so when it comes to everything we're doing, we're constantly evaluating, does it meet these criteria for the goals that we're setting? Now, there are some things that are interesting as far as this goes, as far as goal achievement. Sometimes we have goals that are um, easy to measure. We have like weight loss as an example. Sometimes we have things like, well, in the technology world, and especially the world where I spend most of my time with the Citrix technology, sometimes it's pretty obvious. So we need to deploy a Citrix environment for these users by this time frame. Okay, those are achievable goals, right? They're measurable. They're time bound. They may not be risky in the ways maybe you're always thinking, but we don't always play the safe path when it comes to me doing these kind of things. We try to push the boundaries a little bit about how well we can meet those user desires as well as their basic needs. In other words, Deej don't do minimum viable product. So I'll probably just uh, see how many people I can offend with that one, but kind of don't care either. I really do want to. Whenever I'm doing something, I want to have enough risk involved to make it not only interesting but rich in its experience. And so I'll even inject those into the technology world of saying, okay, are we playing it safe here? Should we be? I'm not saying take risks that are reckless. You don't want to introduce risk. In fact, the whole point of the book Just Do This was to say here's how you reduce risks, but the combination of that is here's how you reduce risks in a way that still allows you to have risky goals where you're setting yourself for more than just was expected of you, which hopefully if you're hanging out with me, if you're seeing this, if you're familiar with me in the slightest, you probably already know that I want you to be somebody like that doesn't just take things as they come and do what you're told, and then just that the bare minimum. I really want you to have an attitude of leaving the world better than you found it, and so that's really my goal and my vision for everyone, not just me, everyone. So anyway, as far as that goes, the next bit that we need to do is break these goals into smaller, achievable sets of sub goals, if you will. And sometimes that can look quarterly. If you're on like a Citrix deployment, for example, what I tend to do is set milestones and I say, okay, by this time we need this part done because I know if we don't get that done, then we'll struggle for the rest of the project, kind of thing. So I'll set milestones in the projects and say, okay, by March 1st, we need to have the ability to say, yes, we can publish Notepad from a public web page, that sort of thing. Yeah, whatever that looks like in your projects or whatever that looks like that. So if it's weight loss, we might take some deep dive into saying, okay, what's realistic here, and how can we make these goals so it's not just like a number that's arbitrary, but actually a measurable result that actually does take the appropriate amount of risk, and adjust from there. An example I gave of adjusting from there is exactly what I'm experiencing now, where the goal was to have a certain amount of weight loss, and I'm not meeting that. My weight is transforming from fat into muscle. So my weight loss isn't working. And so I use a different measure of saying, well, maybe if we specific to fat, or in some cases, you might want to do specific to gaining muscle, or whatever that looks like. The ability to run a certain amount of distance on the treadmill, or whatever at a certain speed, or whatever that looks like. You're setting those goals and you're constantly trying to get to that point, and you're adjusting things along the way so you don't get discouraged. And so then we talked about kind of breaking this out into a full calendar for some of these kind of goals, where we can say, okay, we're starting to order if our goals have a year-long time frame or something like that, maybe we split this out into shorter time frames and shorter time frames. And so we started the concept of saying, okay, well, what if we went by quarter? And so we know what we need to do for the quarter. How do you break that down into months? That sort of thing. So that's what we went next. And then last time we talked about two different concepts. One is kind of my overall scheduling kind of template, I guess, if you will, here. And we're going to we're gonna have some fun with this today. I'm not sure I'm going to demonstrate this fully without having to take a break and pause in the middle to deal with the tech. But we're going to do our best to show you the rest of how I deal with uh, kind of the review processes, which are what I wanted to talk a lot about today. But when it comes to that, we're saying, okay, we're setting top three goals. That's the studies have shown over and over and over again that having just three things to worry about every day, or worry about is probably the wrong thing to say, bad Deej. Words matter. Um, instead of having three focus items, or more than a bunch of focus items in a day, three is the magic number of what tends to work best to actually have achievement in the day. And if other things are, if once those are done, if you want to get into other things, it means one of two things. One, you might not have taken that as a risky enough goal. And you might need to adjust how you're presenting those top three every day, or it just means that you've been working towards something multiple days. And I'll give you an example of that, like I've been doing lately. So there's some things that stay at top three item, even if that carries into multiple days. So we'll get into that. But we talked a lot about how to break this down in a practical sense of saying, okay, we go from yearly to quarterly to monthly to weekly to daily. And we kind of saw a breakdown of how you're just breaking that into the smallest chunks possible, and then getting much more tactical about this of saying maybe our week is split up like this, where we have, we have these goals every week. So maybe like for this weekend of the month, that we're saying this is what our plan is for that week to achieve those goals. So hopefully that is clear. And we're going to attempt to kind of nail this out a little bit more. And so this is where the fun begins, ladies and gentlemen. So let me pull this back to myself for a little bit, and just check in a little bit and make sure that we're all not only functional, but also we are appropriate in our in our way of doing all this. So what we mostly want to do here is um, uh, kind of break this down. So the main thing is that we want to have a weekly top three that we're going for every week. And so what I do is, I mentioned last time that I'll tend to want to review my goals overall from a strategic standpoint of saying, okay, this month I want to work on this to break this into that smaller chunk, and it becomes much more of a overall strategy. Well, when you're every week, what works best for me, even though I'm not always consistent about it, I must confess, is to take a few minutes and say a few minutes, more like an hour or so, to really break down and review everything you did last week. And this, by the way, is why keeping a written planner makes so much sense, because then you can go back in time and just making sure I don't have anything confidential. Actually, what I'm going to do at this point is pull up a blank planner. Give me a moment. I didn't prepare for this, but I also thought I'd have something on the screen. So give me a moment. I'm going to grab next quarter's planner, which hasn't actually started yet. And so this is actually brand new, fresh. Let me show you this thing. All right. So that's a first, huh? You'll never see me get to walk back there. This is the Full Focus Planner from the Michael Hyatt's company, Full Focus. And so this has been my kind of go-to for some time. Like I mentioned yesterday in last section, that I have been experimenting with doing this electronically. And honestly, I am not satisfied with the results. And it's not working the same way. It's more, I'm finding certain things like review to be more difficult. I'm also finding a tendency to just copy and paste everything from day to day, which is kind of making it a little too easy to keep things in my parking lot or the tasks area, and I'm not as engaged with my goals as I think I should be. So we're gonna hope for the best here, but I actually chose this one specifically because it has a this binding here. Past models look well like the ones you see up there, where they're bound differently, so they'd sit flat. This I'm finding on my particular desk, it's easier to sit like this and just be able to write that. But the goal here goal. That's probably the wrong way. The intention here is to have a planner with you at all times that you can write on. And so, like I said, I've experimented with this like multiple different ways, and ultimately, what I keep coming back to is that a physical written planner just seems to still be the best. So the this sits on my desk at all times. Actually, you can't really see it, but if you picture my hand going right down here, boom, I just hit the planner. That's the way this works. So I always have pens and the planner right here, and so it's constantly right in front of my face. I've been trying to do that with the iPad too, and it sort of works, but it's just not. It's not been the same. Sorry, sorry, not sorry. So anyway, here's a breakdown of this particular system, and I don't have like an affiliate link or something like that to really to give you. If I can, figure that out, I might just email the people on my email list that sort of information if I can figure out. But fullfocus.co, is that right? Wow, I am super flustered and obviously prepared today. Um, I will find that out, and I think it's just fullfocusplanner.com is the address to go to get these. And so, and this is it's a little bit more of a premium product, but dang it, you're a premium person. They have lots of options, different sizes. In fact, one I'd experimented with is this one I showed earlier, which is more of a pocket-sized one that I did like, but I found it a little bit more difficult on the desk. It's a little more portable, obviously, but there's just some things that I didn't really find as useful. But anyway, so I want to get some key things to you here. First of all, start off with the annual goals. You're starting by writing those kind of things out. And yeah, so hopefully that link, I'll fullfocusplanner.com. So you write out your annual goals here, right? You start with that. So that means that every quarter when you get a new planner, you're rewriting your annual goals. You're doing that review ahead of time. So like I mentioned last time, my goal is to be in front of the pool for a little while and kind of review everything that's been going on and kind of re-smart or re-smarter my goals. That's my goal, my intention. Words matter. So anyway, you do that, and then a lot of these you'll have in this particular planner. It's kind of nice because you can set which quarter these apply to. And so I might have some goals like later this year. I plan on publishing my next book. It's a bigger undertaking. It's an actual fable, so it's a much bigger thing. It's already in process. It's already in progress as far as the book itself. I've already started the writing process. But here's the thing. I decided to put that goal off until later in the year so I could focus on some of the other things I'm doing. So this quarter was focusing on consulting work to kind of rebuild some things financially, kind of get that sure thing, So some things like that. And the next quarter will be largely focused on a course that will be kind of my masterwork as far as courses go, but it's going to use some of that story within it. So it'll kind of be a good way to re-inspire myself so that during quarter three, when I'm redoing the course for a second time, I'll have more free time on my hands since most of the material will be already created. Then I can use that time towards writing the book. And so, as far as this goes, I'm still going to be writing all of the goals that I have. I just might have a different quarter for each one. So, like, I'll say that my first goal for the year, what my first goal for the year was during quarter one to make a certain revenue number with consulting work to be able to support myself for another quarter. And I met that goal. I'm proud to say that that was a goal met this year. It took some doing and some tenacity, but we got there. We do what it takes. So anyway, you write that down, and then what you can do if you like is on each of those goals, you can break them out into detail on these pages. And so during your review process, you're going through and actually writing these down. And so that is that part of it. A lot of the stuff is also optional. Like you'll have things like monthly calendars. Um, I find these, I don't reference back to them as often, but during the planning phase, sometimes it does help to say, okay, I've got the EUC Masters Retreat end of this month. And then just directly, right, literally the next day, iGel Disrupt here in Nashville, right? So those go into the calendar because I know those are days that I'm not going to really be working towards the goals that much. There's probably not going to be much of a top three in those days. If there's a top three, they're not going to really be significant impact items or taking a significant amount of time. I might still have top threes for the day. I always do, but they might not be the difference. So I know that in advance as far as planning, and that way I can set goals that are realistic for that time frame. Okay. So and some people do rolling quarters. I don't. I probably should get more into that, but I just don't. As far as the way to plan out the year. There's some other things in this plan I'm not going to go into. I think another time we might get into rituals and kind of daily activities and goals that are kind of fit along with like key projects, ideal week. There's a lot of things in here. It's a very rich system, very highly recommended. Until I can get you something that's more specific to us as IT people, this is what I choose. All right. So anyway, this is going to not go well. Hopefully, if you're viewing this on a mobile or something like that, and this is not going to be good resolution, I apologize in advance. We'll try and get some of these themes up on the screen here, but basically, what you're going to see is a couple different things. Notice one of the things I like about this particular system that is not true of some of the others is there's no attempt at putting a date or a calendar on here. You fill that in. For me, it sounds weird, but it gives me an awareness of what day it is. So I start out my day doing that every day. It's weird, but it works. These little things like so you're going to define your big three, just like we talked about previously. You're going to define, okay, what are the top three priorities for today? We're doing that based out of, okay, what is the top priorities for the year, the quarter, the month, and then the week. And so once we've set our weekly priorities, actually, let me get to another page and actually show you that part of it. I'm just going to pause. So I think I skipped something that's really important, and I'll just come back to it here. So what you're going to do is at the beginning of every week or thereon, maybe the end of the week, whatever, before you start working on the next week, regardless, there's a process of doing a preview of saying, okay, go through what did I accomplish this week? What things were my wins? What was accomplished? Those kind of things, and then go on to kind of an after action review of your goals of your big three for the week, right? And saying, okay, what do I need to work on? What's still pending? Is there a percentage of complete you can put to something like that? What do I need to improve, stop, or start or stop? Whether it's going to be something that needs to be kept or killed. That's where you define that. You would also have some like just a sweeper where you're just going back through previous all the week, and you're saying, okay, here's some things I need to do for every single day. I'm looking for tasks that I deferred, so I don't forget about them. We'll get to that in a second. We're looking for things that we've delegated. So here's the things that I've again put into that were in my my quadrant one that now need to be into somebody else's quadrant two, right? So I'm saying, okay, I'm going to delegate this task to you because this is something I need to be focused on something else. And you get to then it's great having like an assistant or a partner or a team member, whatever that looks like. And then another thing about a written planner is the ability to have daily notes you have right there. And so I find a lot that I'll end up reviewing those daily notes and saying, you know what, that's something significant I need to remember for tomorrow or for next week. Or sometimes, actually, you'll notice that each of these pages has a page number And then at the very back of this whole entire planner has an index. And so if you have things that are significant, then you put them on the index, right? So whatever it was, and then whatever page it was, that I've been finding incredibly useful for every quarterly review, especially. But looking back at other planners and saying, okay, here are some significant things that happened during those time frames. And so, like for example, with a previous planner, I can say, ooh, apologies, these pages are kind of stuck together. Oh, that happened. Uh, okay, I guess I won't be on that example. There's some surgery needed there. I don't know how that happens. Sticky fingers, I guess. But you'll have significant things that you can go back and look at. It turns out that, and this is a little embarrassing, but I'll say it anyway, that the um, year ago almost now, yeah, yeah, that I found a video that I'd recorded, and my intention was to use this for a way for people to understand how IT documentation works and what they should be expecting. And it was also something where it was intended to be kind of a front end for a course I have on that topic, right? And so what I found was that somehow in the hustle and all these things that went on in my life, that I somehow just completely forgot about this whole thing, like the whole thing. I don't do marketing for a living. This is not it's not my primary thought is that I know poor Deej. But the thing is, I'd forgotten about it completely. And so when I found that video the day, I was looking at the date and looking at what else. I was, what is this? And it turns out that I had written myself a note that day, but somehow it didn't make it into the index, and so that was bad on my part to not put that into the index. So that means something when you're actually going through and reviewing each week. You're saying, okay, are there notes that need to be dealt with now, or this is something that's significant enough that I need to put into the index so that I can reference back to it later. So a cool system in that regards, to be able to just go, oh, it's on page whatever, and you just go right to it, and you don't have to worry about all the funkiness there. So and then looking at the next week, saying, okay, what things are going on in my personal life, professional life. Um, Maybe you're also looking at some other priorities that other people have and that sort of thing, and you're kind of like just at a high level, very uh, strategic, I guess, in that way. You're looking at those kind of things and saying, okay, how can I break this down? And so you say, okay, there's the overview of the week. This is something that's really good. What are the themes for all these days? What kind of things do I need to know about? And then from there, you can break this down into a couple of things here. One is, if I were to say, okay, what are of all these things that I need to be achieving and all of my monthly goals, all of my, how those are laid out for me, what are the top three things that I need to accomplish this week? What does that entail? And you write that out as a big three for the week. Okay. This is going to be important when you come back and review, because you're going to be looking at that and saying, okay, what percentage of these am I done? Do I need to, make adjustments to that sort of thing? And so you're, putting those things out as a big three. This is really important because from there, like I said previously, you're going to be breaking this down into smaller pieces. So, for example, if my big three for my professional life is to, I'm working towards a Citrix deployment, and let's say we're at the point of getting ready to wanting to be publishing Notepad as a kind of a milestone for this week. Well, I might break that down into several components, like making sure that our servers are actually up and responding and registered and able to hand out applications, that I have the applications published. And then I have my access method all nailed down, whether it's local or remote. I'm getting into my daily jargon. You can hear it just clicking. It's yeah, it's all just a big mess for some people, but for some of you out there in the technology world, you get exactly what I'm saying. But what that is a big three item. So my big three for the week says publish Notepad. And I know that I can put right under that, here's the steps that are involved in that. And then when it comes to every day, I can say, okay, not only should we be working towards this, but I can kind of put this in an order. And the nice thing about this is that if I exceed the time frame or don't exceed the time frame, either one, I know I can just work towards that as a general top three, a big three for the week, and just have every day have a big three item that's involved in that, or maybe one or two. That kind of break down those smaller components into those tasks, so I can just kind of more rapidly get to those if I can. But I've always got that big three item to grab from and say, okay, we're always going to be working towards this first, and everything else can flow into secondary. We're going to keep that in our quadrant two, and everything quadrant one, or especially quadrant three, can be minimized as much as possible. And we say those are not priorities that we should be working on. They may be urgent. They may be things that come up. We may have things that pop up for support requests or tickets that come up, and we have to work on those. But when we're done with that, then we say, okay, what were we working on? Well, it's easy when you have a top three already defined for your day. You just go right back to it and say, okay, now that I'm done resetting their password or having them turn it on or often turn it on again, whatever that looks like, then I can go right back to what I was working on because it's right there in my top three for the day. Hopefully that's making sense to you. And I spent most of my career thinking I would just remember this kind of stuff. Well, let me give you a reality check right now. When you are stressed out and you're under duress, your brain doesn't work like that. The last thing you're thinking of when you get done with something that is an interruption, you're frustrated already, maybe it was something that was relatively difficult to figure out, or there's other stressors that are associated with it. The last thing you're thinking about is what to do next, because that feeling gets associated with that thing to do next. So we talked earlier about having expectations versus agreements. The expectation might be there, but in your mind, you haven't made a solid agreement with it. If you haven't written it down, if it's not there, if it's not your top three item, then guess what? You're going to find a way not to work on that for at least quite a while. Maybe you come back to it later in the day when you calm down or whatever. But if you want to be effective in meeting goals like this, and be a person that's not only reliable, but you're responsible for your own destiny, then this is the good practice to get into, of saying, okay, this is my top three item, and I'm going to always look towards that. Everything else can wait. Seriously. And it's hard to say that sometimes, especially when you're not in control of your schedule and your destiny as far as your work life goes. But I assure you, the more you can present that attitude, the more people will respect it and honor that in you. Trust me, it is a thing. I've seen people that work in like a help desk, a service desk, use this strategy and be able to become a subject matter expert, and then onto an administrator, and then engineer, and move up the chain. Have I seen that? Yes, that's me. That's me. I did that. I didn't just wait for it to happen. I actually got in and said, okay, how can I, be intentional about my time? And that was the process that eventually evolved into this. This is actually much improved from what I was doing at the time, but that's the story here, folks. This is how this works. So some other things in the Michael Hyatt's planner that is kind of cool, like as far as like self-care and things like that. I want to spend a lot of time on that. But let's get back into the thought of each day. So at the beginning of every day, um, this is actually one of the things that helped me with this planner a great deal, was to have a checklist for various things you're doing that aren't necessarily a specific time, but are the tasks that you're doing. So your morning ritual should involve things that are in your kind of ideal day. I'm not getting into that in this particular part of the series. Maybe if there's time on Friday when we finish this all out, maybe we can do it then. But what you want to do is have a ritual in the morning that includes things like self-care, that includes like study and meditation and prayer and things like that, that help you be a more complete person and start your day off to the right um, kind of notion. But then you also want to have things like a workday startup ritual. And so don't confuse these two. Don't think that your morning ritual should be your startup ritual here. Uh, Hear me on this, please. The last thing you want to do The dead last thing you want to do when you first get up in the morning, even though I know probably half or more of the people that actually are watching this probably are guilty of doing this. The last thing you want to do is check your email. That's a bad call. You know, if it was that important and it needed to be addressed first thing when you wake up in the morning, they would have called you. Don't do it to yourself. Don't make that the first thing you see, as it will ruin the rest of your day. I can almost guarantee it. There's very few situations where if I check my email as the first thing I see, if I allow myself to go down that road, very seldom does the rest of my day work like I wanted it to. So the first thing you do, for me, is some form of gratitude or enrichment. And I can tell the days that I don't honor this. And I'm going to be completely honest with you. This morning was one of those days. Can you tell? I'm just so like out of it and flustered and going off the seat of my pants this whole time, right? I didn't really start today with any kind of structure like I usually would want to do. I didn't do any reading. I didn't spend any time meditating. I just went right to a shower and to breakfast, and then started thinking about, okay, I need to start working on this other thing, and got myself distracted. And I was actually 2 minutes late to my first appointment, even though I was started way early. It's chaos. It's not good. So that morning ritual actually does make a lot of sense. But the other part here is the startup ritual for the workday. And this is actually another important thing that I did actually manage to do that kind of in the midst of a break. I said, okay, let's not have this day without nailing down what I'm going to do for the day. And so writing into my planner, okay, what are my top 3 items for a day? So this is the big 3. So it's 3 things, right? So you're focused on the big 3 on a daily basis from your weekly top 3. Now, that does not mean that these have to line up exactly with your other ones. In fact, in a lot of cases, for me especially, having multiple things that I'm working on in multiple different avenues, a lot of times my top 3 for a day might all have to do with only one item for my top 3 of the week. Sometimes it might be something that is just important enough and time bound enough that it's not part of my weekly top 3, but it is something important enough that I need to prioritize it for that day. And so I'll put it into the top 3 of the day. So things like that actually do help a great deal in terms of not only keeping yourself focused, but allowing yourself that grace of saying, if I don't need to worry about it today, I'm not going to worry about it today, because I have a system that's going to allow me to say, okay, every day, part of my process is I'm going right back to my weekly top 3 and saying, okay, what were those? Okay, what do I need to do to accomplish that today? You're constantly looking back towards that, and it's fresh enough in your mind. You don't have to go back through previous days necessarily to see what you missed. So a week is a good time frame as far as your memory goes. So that's part of the work day startup ritual. The next parts of it will be to say, okay, are there other tasks that I can do that aren't really top tasks? Now this differs a little bit, and this is why I think I'll end up making another planner, is because in my mind, I think you end up with 2 different days. Hear me out on this. I think you end up with a day at work or doing work, and you end up with a day that is yourself, right? Ideally, in most places of the world, a work day is an 8-hour endeavor. This is not all true of everyone or everywhere, but generally speaking, we tend to work in thirds. Our days are in thirds. We have a third for effort or for work. We have a third for self, or eating or whatever, and then we have a third for sleeping, because for some reason we were created with this need to spend a third of our lives sleeping. Bummer. But that's who we are, what we are, right? So in terms of that goes, obviously sleeping, there's not a lot of goals involved in that. But my kind of thinking with this is that I think that the system needs to be evolved a little bit to say, okay, I need personally in my life, I need to say there's top 3 things every day for me. And so separating that a little bit. Now, not everybody works like that. A lot of times people will say, and actually the folks that made this planner will say that you put your personal items in with your top three here. So you'd have like a top one for work, maybe, and a personal one and something else, that sort of thing. And I think that works. But for me personally, what I want to do is be a little bit more open about that as far as like my time frames of the day. So I can look, it's a work time. Okay, I'm going to focus on this, but, but the thing is, what we want to do here also is say, what about those margins? And that's why I'm calling this in the margins for this series, right? So, what about the times in the margins? What about the times that aren't necessarily work top three items? Normally I'd say just, grab these other tasks here, and I'll show you in a minute how to make these kind of stand out more necessary than others necessarily, and kind of how we're tracking how those are working. But in those margins, in those times we have unscheduled time, for example. This happened this morning where a meeting actually ended a little bit early. And so I said, okay, well, one of my top three items for this week was to get a document deliverable done. Right. And so one of my top three items for the last 2 days has been working on that document. And so because my meeting ended about an hour and 20 minutes early, I said, well, okay, I've got a quick minute to go. I can go quick, get a bite to eat, and then get some of this refreshing water. Lovely. And then I can work on this document, up until a certain amount of time that I'd normally be that set aside for prepping for this broadcast, right? So that's exactly what I did. I put about roughly an hour into this document. So now I'm a little bit ahead of where I thought I would be for the day, right? But that was because of the top three item. I said, okay, I can fit that in my margin here. Now, what would happen if I said, well, I've got some free time. Let's cruise YouTube, or whatever, And there might be some time that I've spent. Actually, one of my top three items has been growing my LinkedIn network. So every day I'm actually spending time on that on purpose. I'm not just spending idle time. It becomes kind of like that in a way, but at the same time, I'm doing it in a structured manner to kind of keep that into the right lanes, I guess you could say, in my mind, of saying, I have certain intentions about, I want to connect with this many people. I want to have, this much engagement, and, and measure this, as I go. And it's working. It's been great. But the reality is that if I don't have that as part of my top three, uh, if I fall into it, it'll be by accident, right? And if I don't have that attitude of saying in the margins of my time, especially one of those unplanned ones, if I don't kind of make myself such a harsh way to say that, but it is true. If I don't have the intentionality of, if I don't have the intentionality of serving myself in that top three, in other words, when I say serving myself, I mean not only a sense of accomplishment and like that, but having that time well spent means I can spend more time relaxing later, and that just works well. I mean, it just does. You know, uh, there's little siestas and stuff like that I'll take during the day. Absolutely, I'll make that a priority in terms of some of those purposely unstructured time. I'll do that too. That gets more into life planning than anything else, but you get what I'm saying. So when you have, especially the unstructured time or time where you need to recover, those sort of things, having those top three items or things you can grab from are really important. Now, sometimes you'll have top three items that rely on other people. Um, and this is often where the things like here, which is just writing out your schedule. If you're like me, you end up with a schedule in multiple different places. So this is I'm going to sound like I'm complaining here, so fair warning. But I have to have six calendar. Actually, thank you, Cloud Service Group. I have 7 calendars that I now maintain for myself. I know. Um, sorry, it's just the way it is. But there are 7 different calendars that I have to keep track of, and so this actually does help me out quite a bit because I can actually say I can aggregate all those in the first of the morning and say what do I need to know, and especially those ones that aren't talking to the same system, ones that I can't put into Outlook, that I have to have other web pages open just to see what my next appointment is. Eh. Sorry, if I sound frustrated, it's because I'm frustrated. Yeah. But it allows me here to say, okay, I can aggregate all that here and know it's important. But it also let me see, what do I have room for? What do I okay, maybe I have something from 8 o'clock to noon, and then this happening now, and then I've got another thing at 2 o'clock. Well, there's a gap there. What am I going to do during that time from noon to 1 o'clock? It's going to depend. In this case, I'm going to go, spend some time with my wife because, I've got an hour. And great thing is, I had some unstructured time there, right? So from 10 o'clock, 10:40 on, right? I had some unstructured time that I could work with. So I actually got some of the things that I was going to do later on today already ahead, right? So I'm already ahead. So it's going to feel a lot better when I go spend time with my wife. I'm not going to be worried about some of those things I could be doing in the unstructured time like that. I'm actually putting a structure and an intention to it. Michael Hyatt has a great quote. Michael Hyatt, the creator of this, or the co-creator of this system, has a great quote, and it is, "What gets scheduled gets done." There it is, right there. What gets scheduled gets done. We can rely on our best intentions all we want, but the reality is that that's just not the way this works. So now this is the fun part. I'm going to try to draw this out. So at the very bottom here, you can see these little symbols here, and this is what I thought was kind of groundbreaking for me, and has actually been hugely helpful for me, was to have symbols that I designate for these purposes. Right? You'll see in the margins, here, and also the big things up here, is just a kind of a space for you to have some sort of symbol. This isn't just to check this off. This is also to say, yeah, check it off if it's done. But if you're waiting for someone else, then you can mark that. If you want to delegate that to someone else, then you can mark that. If you're going to defer that to another time, you mark that. Or if it's something, what, this is not something that needs to be done. Somebody else is going to do it, whatever works. I didn't need to do it, or it's just not truly meeting our goals, then you delete it. And so those are the symbols that I use. Now, for somebody like me that works with multiple clients and that sort of thing, I've gotten to the point where I've actually started to color code things in my planner. It's actually what I was hoping to show you today, but this is a challenge I'm going to have for the next quarter, because I was color coding things in the electronic planner, and I'm going to try an attempt to do that here. Now, this is a tip just for me, really, just because I don't know why I like to complicate things, but there's certain psychology about seeing things differently. And for me, color works. For a lot of folks, color would not work very well, especially if you're colorblind or blind. So these kind of things would not work well at all. You need to have a different system. I'm just saying that for me, these kind of things work, and having these symbols works really well. So if I color code things like these symbols, then there's a certain level of accomplishment that comes out of that, or a sense of control of my life and my calendar, because I'm doing that. And so the more you get into a pattern of doing that every single day, the more you'll be able to find you're achieving things more effectively, both professionally and personally. And so, like I said, eventually I want to kind of hybridize this a little bit. There's some other things about these systems that I think are good, but could use some improvement for people that work in technology. So I'm going to try and do that and start beta testing that at some point. And guess what? That is not a 2013 goal. So when I'm recording this, that is not a goal. It's a goal. It's actually sitting in the parking lot over there. So it's over in that direction, right even here, is to create something like that. So it's not structured as a goal right now. It's just something where I have the idea written down, and it's just not into an actual goal yet, because other things are more important right now. So that's the way it works. So the other thing I want to point out here, just before we close, is to take notes throughout your day. And you'll notice here, and this is another brilliant thing. Notice here is, you'll have a little space for a symbol or whatever you want to put there, that helps, but also the time of day that you noted it. Uh, so when I'm on calls, that I need to take notes on those calls, I have a section right there in front of me. I don't have to search for a notepad, whatever. It's right there. Brilliant. It sounds weird, but just having a space for notes right there in your planner, right next to your daily tasks, your schedule, and everything like that. I have actually sometimes in the other versions, I've actually drawn lines between the note and the actual appointment that I was actually doing that. That was actually really useful when I was doing a lot of coaching and discovery calls. But as far as the notes section, The other thing that's really key here is, again, the um, the page number, so you can actually reference those later. So if you have a brilliant idea, write it down, reference it later, put it in the index. That way, you don't have to sit there worrying about, will I remember that idea? Like somebody we know, right? There's some symbols that are used here too, that I think are cool. I use a slightly different system for these, but this works pretty well as well. It's like when you're noting things here and saying, I need to make this a to-do item. I need to do this. I need to make this something I do for the next week or whatever, or the next day. That way, when you're doing your review process every day, and then also the bigger processes during the week and the month and the quarter, then you're looking back through these notes and saying, okay, literally, in some cases, like me, I'll literally go through and look back through previous notes and look for anything that's marked as a to-do item or an important item, and say, was that resolved? And if not, I'll mark it down for something to work on, or to make sure it's indexed, or whatever works for you. And in my case too, a lot of times what I'll end up doing is marking those things off so I don't forget next time. I write things down so I don't have to remember them. That's the way that works. Um, so hey, I hope that all is a good overview for you. Like I said, it's not exactly what I wanted to do today, but I'm glad that I had a blank planner to show you, and won't compromise any personal or professional information that is in my current planners, which I can't show you. So I did. Let's see. The other week, I did kind of give an example of this a little bit. So let me see if I can pull that back up again. No. Guess what? Those work like you think they're going to work. So again, you'll have maybe some stuff for client A in your schedule, lunch with the wife, is I think what that says. I can't even read my own writing. I'm worse than a doctor. it's it's built-in encryption. It's nobody can read it but me, kind of thing. And I might have other things that are, like I said, you can see I like color coding, like I was saying. And then maybe you have things like this in your day where you're just saying, okay, I don't have anything structured, but I'm going to mark this down, and then I want to work on my top three. And so you just mark that as time, and then maybe you just have these margins that you can fit in things in your top three. So these are um, basically how that works out, right? And so for me, like I said, I color code based on the top three goal it is, or if it's a client, I might have a different coloring system for that sort of thing. This is actually not literally my coloring system, as it turns out. I actually use orange for clients. I just didn't think the orange would show up quite as well. It kind of messed up here, but yeah. So anyway, whatever. Get a system that works for you and make it your own. That is the kind of the what I'm saying here. So yeah, let me bring us back. Breathe. Okay. So checking the live chat as we're in this live. I don't see any other questions. If you are here live and you have any questions, go ahead and put them up. We'll also hopefully have a time coming up here soon where we can actually do more of like a Zoom kind of a thing. It's probably gonna be next month, but if it happens, it was just made gauging if there's interest in that sort of thing. So if you have interest in that, please do let me know, and we can get on that sort of thing down the road. I do want to kind of start reviving the office hours concept actually a little bit, and getting more of that out for you guys. And so it's a big reason why I decided to focus on the consulting work for this first quarter of the year, was so that I could say with confidence that I can spend the time and have more unstructured time that I can spend in like meeting with you and coaching calls and live broadcasts and office hours, those sort of things. I knew it was going to be important to me, but I also knew that I needed to change some things about the way last year went, because last year didn't went. Or I shouldn't say it that way. I should say didn't go so well. So anyway, that's the adjustment that I've made for this year, and so far it's been great. So let's spend some inspirational time here, shall we? Um, yeah. So in a nutshell, what I want you to remember is that I'm not going to say this can be fun, but it kind of can be. It kind of can be an enjoyable experience, especially when you start writing things down. There's a connection between your hand and the world, right? So it's not just what schedule gets done. It's also a matter of what you write becomes a priority for you. It becomes connected. A lot of people don't like these written planners because they end up writing the same thing over and over again each day. What that does is a couple things. It forces you to reevaluate if your goals are really that important to you, first of all. Secondly, it makes it so that you are more likely. The percentages vary in whatever study. The most reliable study I've seen said you were 63% more likely to actually accomplish a goal if you wrote it down every single day. 63% more likely. That's a pretty significant change from just having it in your phone or having it on a sticky note or whatever. Physically writing it out every day was actually what really helped. For some of you, you might have some growing pains with that, or you might find it frustrating or something like that. I can tell you that one of the things that I found in my life is that I've debated on this one actually. As I started to travel more, not having access to this right as I'm at a desk or whatever can be a little daunting. But I'm finding that, again, being able to just have a place for notes sometimes works. In fact, I'm pretty sure this one has it as well. I'm checking. I can not make a fool of myself, but yeah. So there's a section at the back for notes. So in a good planner, look for that as well. Something where you're not only able to take it with you, but you can also, have other places you can take notes and things like that are significant and you can note for later. Because again, writing it down matters. When I tell people that are going through assessments and whatnot, or training for the IT assessments, that writing things down matters, whether it's typing it out or even sometimes better yet, writing it down physically. It connects you with the conversation. So it's multiple different ways this works. So in terms of your calendar, in terms of what you're doing with your life, and what you're doing, that sounded really high school dad, didn't it? What are you gonna do with your life? But that's not the intention, really, or maybe it should be. The honest truth is that we all have some level of ambition, but what I'm willing to say is that most of us have levels of ambition that we just don't realize are there yet. The great thing about that is sometimes people think of ambition as a bad thing. We think of ambition like Wolf of Wall Street kind of things, or like the bad side of that, I guess you could say, as far as like the usury, that sort of not kind of human being I want to be kind of thing. But the reality is, ambitions can be good, not only for yourself, but for others around you. The things I've been able to bless our family with because of ambition, because of achieving goals, because of looking to improve and do things that matter, have been amazing. I mean, I was thinking about this as I was walking through the house today. I love where I live, and it feels foreign to me sometimes. I've been here for 5 years now, and it still feels foreign to me. It's like, is this my house? Is this really mine? It's not like it's like super fancy or anything like that. It's not, but it's the biggest house I've ever lived in. It's nice. I go get into a car that's a BMW. How did this happen? It wasn't handed to me. It was because I was able to take advantage of opportunities that were given in an appropriate kind of way. And I was able to structure my life in such a way that these kind of things could be done. So it's really important to realize that it's not only that you can, it's really that you kind of should. I don't think that it really serves us well if we're not willing to take on some level of responsibility for what happens in our lives. It sounds easy to say things like that, but I mean, really, Like, if you're not willing to write it down, if you're not willing to spend the time to actually, do that, it's not like we're asking a lot here. It's not like I'm saying, well, you need to go to school and study for years and years so you know how to, structure your days. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying, like, even an hour a week working on this from a general concept of intentional time to say, this is what I want to do with my life this week. Just something just that simple makes an enormous impact on the rest of your week. And I meet people all the time, especially in the IT world, that don't seem to think that that would ever work for them. They think it's just for people that are in sales or management or whatever. But I got to tell you, it works for everybody, especially those that have these very randomized and kind of under controlled schedules where things will just pop up that they have to deal with. The more you spend the time taking intention over your life and saying, this is what I'm doing and why, and here's how I'm going to do it, and setting those smarter goals for yourself. It doesn't matter if there's something simple like, losing weight or whatever, whatever that looks like for you. It's the process of doing it that makes us into better people. And the making of better people lets us bless those around us even more. I truly believe that. I don't know a lot of like super wealthy people, but I will say that the ones that I have met and spent significant amounts of time with, the pattern I see with all of them is that they're incredibly generous. And they are generous, but they also have boundaries of saying, if they're meeting with me, it's a very specific time frame. And it's not because they're uptight. It's because they want to honor the other people in their lives. And that's what I want you to do. Honor the other people in your lives by taking control of your schedule and fitting things into the margins instead of trying to be a panic. All right? Awesome. It's great to be with you today. I hope this is helpful to you. And I'll close it there, not seeing anything comments or anything like that. So what I'll just say in closing is, once again, you're here to thrive. So get after it. We'll see you next time.